Years have been extremely challenging globally, and Ghana has not been an exception. The difficult economic environment has truly affected businesses and families, particularly the vulnerable in our society. These challenges have severely affected households, increased cost of living, and limited the creation of job opportunities. Our young people continue to seek employment opportunities beyond what the state can provide. A difficult time, and I deeply empathize with our fellow Ghanaians. Mr. Speaker, over the last 2 years, government has embarked on a number of decisive measures to get us back on the path of fiscal consolidation, economic stability, and growth. And I'm happy to note that these policies we have implemented are yielding the expected results. Growth continues to exceed our expectations. The 4.7% growth rate reported by the Ghana Statistical Service for the first quarter 2024 exceeds the 3.1% recorded in the same period in 2023. Inflation is declining. End June inflation rate of 22.8%, a reduction of 31 percentage points from the December 2022, which confirms the target of 15% by end 2024 is possible. Exchange rate has largely stabilized compared to December 2022, despite the recent pressures.
Finance Minister did talk about how government was living within its means and how they were not coming to Parliament to ask for any more money and were staying within the appropriation passed for the 2024 budget.
This address was uninspiring, bereft of new ideas, gives no hope, and fails to offer a roadmap for addressing the numerous problems facing the people of Ghana. This media review leaves many people disappointed and uninspired. It gives no hope to the people of Ghana, and that anything this government had said and have done over the last 7.5 years, they've done nothing to reverse the negative trend. In the last 8 years, the Akufo-Addo Bawumia government have burdened the ordinary Ghanaian and businesses with a number of taxes, making Ghana a high tax regime.
The Minister has walked us through some major interventions. One, that the school feeding program, which was previously being patronized by 1.6 million Ghanaian children, is now being patronized by 4 million Ghanaian children. In other words, 4 million Ghanaian vulnerable children are benefiting from the school feeding program. Yeah. Mr. Speaker, again, the minister has simply told us that today, 2024 budget, 6.5 billion has been allocated for the NHIS as compared to 1.6 billion in 2016 by those who are in opposition today. I mean the John Mahama government.
You're welcome back. You heard the Finance Minister, Dr. Amin Adam. You heard Keso Attoforson, the Minority Leader, and the Majority Leader, Alexander Afenyo-Marking. Here in the studio, Godfred Bokwing, Professor of Finance and Economist, University of Ghana, Dr. Stephen Amoah, Deputy Minister of Finance and MP in Shaiso. Kofi Adams is MP Buam and member Public Accounts, Defense and Interior Committees of Parliament. Gentlemen, thank you very much for making time to join us this morning. And I start with Dr. Stephen Amoah. The minister said that he empathizes with Ghanaians about the difficulties they are going through. I have heard you also repeated this by saying you appreciate the difficulties. You are not discounting that there are difficulties that people are going through in this country. How does this budget demonstrate that the government empathizes with Ghanaians in these circumstances?
Sorry, what did you say, please?
How does this budget demonstrate that the government empathizes with Ghanaians about their current difficulties?
Thank you very much for your important question to us. My regards to the good people of Ghana, and my greetings to my fellow discussants on your platform, and I thank you for this opportunity. And I also greet the Nshieso constituents, every stakeholder there. I thank them for this opportunity, by the grace of God. I think it is quite clear that the media budget, 2024 media budget review, which was presented, is a material evidence of the fact that we actually integrated the welfare and the utility and the satisfaction of the good people of Ghana by making sure that in times such as this, looking at our fiscal space and looking at our debt to GDP issues, even though it has been reduced slightly after including the Dachi and the ESLA and the Cocoa Board stuff like that, we still reduce it from about 72.9 to about 72.3. We still have to, we should have honestly increased our our taxes to enhance our internally generated fund revenue to still consolidate our fiscal space. But we consider the fact that, yes, Ghanaians, just as like most of the countries in the world, are still going through post-COVID hardship. It is a fact. Prices and stuff like that. So we decided not to introduce any new tax, increase anything that will increase or put further burden on Ghanaians. Aside that, my minister, Dr. Amin Adam, by the president, through my minister, we have actually launched SME Go. With committed amount of about 8.2 billion, and this time to make sure that SMEs, actors are given large amount of money so that they can create jobs to support Ghanaians. If you look at social intervention policies, looking at the cash and non-cash in terms of redistribution policies, we've done a lot to increase government commitment by allocating a lot of funds in the area of LEAP, school feeding, in the area of even the national health insurance and all those things. So these are clearly evidence or indicative of the fact that the government is highly committed to the welfare of Ghanaians. And the minister emphatically, just as the president also said, and I also stand by it, that we all show empathy. And because of some of that, we've been very disciplined in managing our fiscal space. If you look at the primary macro indicators, which probably time will allow me to expatiate, because I have to stay within your question. We've been working so hard to stabilize the economy and make sure that we can grow to affect these areas. So I think it is very clear statement that the government, per its recent policies, per its discipline in terms of disciplinary actions, being a government that is actually taking into consideration how the world went, the crisis that we came in, and that led to we engaging IMF and setting indicative targets that we have outperformed almost all the targets and bringing this economy back to life. If you see that the trends, the negative trends are being reversed. I call it speed and accuracy. So you look at all these facts. These are material facts in terms of numbers. They were the same numbers that were a couple of years back, people were insulting the government, saying all sorts of things. Some were even calling God and other things. And now we see them gradually coming back. We stay within our budget framework in terms of our revenue and expenditure, not adding non-concessional loans. So all these things are clearly showing the position of this government today, how we care about the ordinary Ghanaians, how we care about the suffering of Ghanaians, and how we are mitigating the impact that the world crisis had on the Ghanaians.
Kofi, so deliberately, I need all of you to cast your preliminary comments or overview of the budget against the comments or the assurance that the government or the minister empathizes with Ghanaians as far as the difficult circumstances are concerned. How can you tell using the budget to demonstrate that that statement is accurate?
Well, thank you, Samson, for the opportunity, and let me say good morning to Prof. and my colleague, Honorable Dr. Stephen Amwa, and of course, our viewers out there and my constituents. And let me take this opportunity to wish my party members who are in Tamale very well. Today, we're launching our campaign that will drive us to victory 2024 come December 7th. And so I wish all of them well. Those who are still journeying, maybe journey mercy to all of them. And I believe that they will return to their positions and carry on with the intentions of the party to campaign massively to make sure that we act out this non-performing government. Having said so, you see, we vote governments to work and deliver development for our well-being. We don't vote them to come and just give us words. Words that you cannot relate to action. Words that you cannot relate to activity. Words that you cannot actually relate to the daily occurrences in your life and in the performance of that government. I would have thought, and we will be looking into the details as we moved on, that in empathizing, you give us indication that you are doing A, B, C, D to demonstrate that you truly empathize. You don't empathize with me, Samson, if I have lost a relation, and at the same time, you are laughing and smiling all over around. When you are empathizing with somebody who is going through a certain situation, your behavior will tell whether truly the words that you use, you mean them.
The budget does not reflect austerity.
The budget does not reflect that. The budget, the government policies, the budget that was presented does not reflect that.
Show us how.
For example, we've all been complaining, businesses have been complaining, that they need a certain support, a certain arrangement that will enable them perform better or at least come above and be able to sustain themselves. Because a number of them are already leaving the country and more have plans to leave. This budget that was presented gives no comfort to any business person. If your situation doesn't get worse, they have just told you that you are just going to be at the same thing that has been happening is what is going to happen. No comfort for any business. So
you were in the house yesterday.
I was in the house yesterday.
You approved tax waivers for how many companies?
Well, yesterday we
About
did not
42
approve
tax waivers.
We
right?
did not approve a tax waiver. What we did was more of a tax substitution. So government now acquire shares.
No. What was before you was tax waivers.
Well,
and you approved it
originally,
and it is intended to cushion some of these companies.
No.
So that they don't leave the country to the other places, like you said, correct?
Since you have asked this question, it's not part of my presentation. It was before us. It's a bauxite arrangement. The bauxite company, I think, being run by some Indians before, and then they were selling it. Government originally had 20% shares. This company was asking for a 38-point-something million tax waivers, and we opposed it. So following our opposition to it, negotiations went on and on and on, and they agreed that, okay, instead of a waiver for them, a complete waiver for them where they would not pay it, they were willing to convert it to what? Shares. So they did the evaluation of the company and brought the value of the company, which gave Ghana additional 2-point-something% shares. Then the value that they brought was disagreed upon. And so the Ministry of Finance went further to do an independent evaluation. That increased the government's share or Ghana's share to 3%. So as we speak now, instead of the 20% that we had, the 38-point-something million tax waivers has given Ghana an additional 3%. So it is not a waiver as we know it in the past, but it's more like tax substitution. So we've gotten shares for.
I think we are talking about two different things.
No.
Here. You go on with the budget, because
I don't know what you are talking about, because that was the only thing we did yesterday. That was the only thing we did in relation to tax yesterday.
The approved tax waiver amounts to 1.5 million euros for the supply and installation of e-learning laboratories in senior high schools across the country. This is in the list of what I'm referring to.
Well, what I know we did yesterday, I'm a member of the Public Accounts Committee, as you said earlier. We had our sittings in the morning. I'm unaware that during the morning sitting, any tax was considered. But we considered this bauxite. Unfortunately, I don't have my other paper here to be able to refer to it directly. But what we did yesterday was a 38-point-something million tax issues in relation to a bauxite arrangement. But that one was a tax substitution.
That's a different thing.
So that's what I know of. I'm not aware of this one that you are talking about.
All right. So thank you for your preliminary comment. Let me come to him.
You took my preliminary away from the real things that I wanted to say to the issue of. But anyway, we'll have opportunity to come.
Exactly. You are coming to
it.
But
one correction that I wanted to also make, that I'm no more a member of the Defense and Interior Committee. As a result of the realignment,
new changes.
I've been moved to the Security and Intelligence Committee, a committee that I now ranked.
Okay.
So I'm more with the Defense and Interior Committee.
Yes, Professor Bokwin, from where you sit, this budget is a reflection of the empathy that the government has for Ghanaians because of the difficult circumstances. No?
Good morning, Samson.
Good morning.
Good morning, Prof.
Good morning, the good people of Ghana. Well, I think government is trying to be smart and identify with the ordinary Ghanaian, but the document doesn't align with that totally. We can understand that from two perspectives. If you look at where we came from, especially 2022, and where we are now, we've made some progress. Yes, some level of recovery, but that recovery is not people-focused. It's a recovery that has left millions of Ghanaians behind. So you can't look at the macro numbers and say that, okay, once we've seen this recovery, then all is well with Ghanaians. Actually, there is a big gap between the macro level development that the government is talking about and then micro household level development where Ghanaians are still going through a lot of challenges. And that is consistent with, you see, when you create economic disruptions, the cost of correcting that can be huge. So, Samson, if you look at it in our history, I want to situate this within our history. This is probably one of the most expensive and pricey economic recovery in our history. Pricey and expensive because of the sacrifices Ghanaians have to go through. And the price that we have to pay are coming through three different channels. Fiscal consolidation through higher taxes. And something, since 2015, if you look at the number of tax adjustments and new tax handles on the continent, no country compares to Ghana. And then beyond that, if you look at what we call the official tax rates, and then the backdoor approach that government has adopted in the last couple of years to collect more money from businesses and households, sometimes through treating the straight levies differently from the VAT. So for instance, if you compare Ghana's VAT, standard VAT rate, it will come across as though it's one of the lowest in Africa, 15%. But actually, the effective incidence of the VAT is 21.9% because if you look at the straight levies, it quakes like a duck, and you just have to call it like that. So by treating it as straight levies, you create the impression that your standard VAT rate is very low. But actually, the effect, or the cumulative effect of all of that, takes the incidence of that tax handle together with the straight levies to almost 21.9%. And it's counterproductive. You don't need a prophet to tell you If your standard VAT rate or the effective VAT rate at the end of the day goes beyond 18%, it's counterproductive. So that's another level. So something overall, we say that yes, we've made some progress at a very pricey level, very costly, but we are not out of the woods yet. If you look at it from the perspectives of the way we will look at economics, macroeconomic stability, as we are talking about, is not the same as development. It's not the same as transformation. It's just a means to an end. To talk about economic transformation and inclusive productivity growth, you first need to guarantee macroeconomic stability. That's the dominant view in economics. It will take a while, and the consistency is very important before this macro level development will translate to micro and household level improvement. And I can give you specific examples. If you look at the data from the World Bank, actually poverty at the lowest end has been increasing from 2021 through 2022, 2023, and the forecast all the way up to 2025, 2026 is projected to increase. The other interesting thing to bear in mind, and what I spoke about, international poverty at 2.15 USD in 2017 purchasing parity terms was 24.8% 2021. It's gone up to 25.8% 2022, 30.3% 2023, forecast 2024, 32.9%, 33.2%. But something, this is where probably you have captured. Lower middle income poverty rate is rather high, 47% in 2021, projected 50.2% 2022, 55.3% 2023, and by forecast, 58.7% 2020. That is lower middle income poverty. When it comes to upper middle income poverty, it's even high, 76.7, 78.9, 82. It's simply also because of the impact of inflation and the rest of them. If you look at vulnerable employment, if you look at the percentage of the youth that are not in school, are not in employment, don't have any skill, we are hitting close to 2 million. If you put all these things together, and even if you look at how many Ghanaians were pushed into poverty in 2022 alone because of inflation, the question is...
That was almost 900,000,
yes.
According to the
and since then, more people are...
That was extreme poverty.
Yes, and a lot of people are joining that pool. So the question is, how many people have this recovery lifted out of extreme poverty? How is this recovery carrying Ghanaians along? So that's why we are saying that this recovery is not people-focused. Because if you look at the dynamics right now, it will also be too early to judge the IMF program at the micro and the household level, because it will take a while before all of this. So I think what we need right now is a certain level of humility and assurance to Ghanaians that we need to sacrifice a little bit long, hopefully, that in good times we'll be able to share it among every Ghanaian, but we are not there yet.
All right, thank you. Yes, you want to make a response. You do that quick before I ask you my substantive question. Yes,
oh, okay.
Steve.
I thought we were going to go into...
Because you lifted your hand up.
A couple of things I want to say. Samson and Prof and my brother here, let's be very honest. Anytime, it doesn't matter who is in government, that government touts itself with this macroeconomic stability and achievement. Ghanaians do make these comments. We don't feel in our pocket. It doesn't have the micro impact. Practically, it is true. But let's be very technical and tell them one of the major causes, which is as a result of uncontrollable factors. Our economic market, or our market, is largely SMEs. And normally the SMEs, their systematic risk index is far less than 1. What it means is that when the economy moves 10% forward, they move slowly or they don't move at all. We have elsewhere that the market largely are having systematic risk index of 1. So when it moves, they move with them. So practically, it takes a very long time. So if you have just about, say, even 1 year after this world crisis, where our inflation rate went to about 50.1%, the world grew -3.3%, Ghana was growing 0.4%. With all these, dangerous zones we found ourselves in economically, and we are recovering. Practically, you will not have ready impact on Ghanaians. So it is a fact. But let us appreciate it, not as if probably the giant achievements or attainment of the managers of the economy where we are reversing this negative trends are showing clearly that yes, there's hope and there's future. And as he said, we have to be humble and then also let Ghanaians understand that things are getting better. If your child is not well, vomiting, not eating, growing lean, and you see, oh, now he's not vomiting, the temperature is still high, now he's eating but not as he used to, then you have hope. And this is where we are. So sometimes this connection between macro and micro in our country is as a result of our market nature.
All right.
We need to understand.
There's been a reduction in the appropriation bill, and that is 21.7 billion Ghana cedis. What does that mean?
What I know is that we have interest payments. I mean, they are external. If I'm lying, prophecy. And then we also have, I think, one other area, amortization. So what it means is that maybe we are appropriated to spend ABCD. We are staying within, but are not going beyond. Because, of course, our difficulty now is probably, in my opinion, sometimes as a country, expenditures that probably get our fiscal space out of order and put us into trouble.
Right. So
I
I
hope
just
you
needed
understand
that quick explanation to ask you a next question. Can you help me
so
further on that?
Yeah.
21.7 billion reduction in the appropriation bill. What does that mean?
It's largely a reflection of the progress we have made with the external debt restructuring. So when they presented the 2024 budget, they had incorporated the full interest payment and amortization. But now that we are done, we need to recalibrate that to reflect the savings and the relief that we have made. So essentially, it's not like government...
As a result of the interest,
has done anything.
external interest,
and that is not the kind of expenditure card we have been pushing for all this while. So let's not package it as though this is extraordinary and all of that is. And of course, something that's why we are saying this is one of the most pricey recovery. Right. So if you look at the savings, even if you talk about the Euro bonds, some Ghanaians have invested in Ghana government Euro bonds. Even if you look at the domestic and the rest of it. So whilst government is counting the gains to bondholders, these costs, these sacrifices, and all of that, then people have to adjust their lifestyle in order for the country to have a breathing space.
Thank you. So Samson, for example, if you look at paragraph 70, they had interest payments which amounted to 29,348 million. That's about 3.5% of the against the target of billion. Against the target of what? 44.8 billion. So you realize that it is because you are not servicing your debts, you are not paying interest as a result of the program in which we are. That is what has brought about that savings. Not because they have cut expenditure in areas, including areas they have promised to
wasteful expenditure.
Just yesterday, we were looking at the foreign exchange payments and receipts of Bank of Ghana report. You would realize that travels and all kinds of things in 2023 went up heavily against the president's promise that this was not going to happen. So it tells you they are not cutting costs in areas they should be cutting to help reinvest.
In Kenya, the Gen Zs went on the street and stopped it completely. The president has stopped it. So unnecessary travels have all been cut.
And we have one too many in Ghana.
Now, Steve, the finance minister talks about our debt burden, the debt hole of 742 billion. The Akufo-Addo government alone has brought us a debt addition of 619 billion plus from what the Mahama regime had added, which was 86 billion. The things that you intend to achieve within the next, 4 months, are they plausible? Are they realistic in the face of this deep debt gulf?
Okay, Samson, thank you very much. Once again, just quickly, I think we're being asked what you've been doing to kind of support the poor in our country. My brother raised that we've done nothing. Time may not allow me, but I realize that we have disbursed about 5.4 billion cedis to support LEAP, school feeding program, capitation grant, NHI, since 2024 to reduce the burden on the vulnerable in our country. I mean, I can read on and on. You check all of them, 1.5 billion CDs to support
which you would not have disbursed.
They are all there.
Which you would not have disbursed, but for the difficult situations, is that what you mean?
Disbursed that we've done.
So,
I'm coming. So it doesn't, they shouldn't paint a picture as if we are not thinking about it. We've done a lot. No, you.
That's not the question.
But let me go and answer your question. Something.
Yeah.
We need to look at our economy, what it is, and explain. Sometimes allow people, I don't know everything in finance and economy. I wouldn't say that.
You're a finance person.
But it's my area when it comes to macroeconomic and finance. Just as you speak on law, doctors speak on health. Sometimes people should also listen to us. Practically, if we want to take,
you.
If we want to take away
in finance, PhD is not a cheap thing to come by.
If we take away politics, we run what I describe as negative effective tax rate economy. What it means is that whether party A or B in government, whether COVID or no COVID, generally, monies outlaid every year in this country by all governments. If you divide them among the households, the money each house will get is always, or generally, or most of the times, less than the amounts that government generate as revenue without or excluding loans if you divide the same amount. What it means is that characteristically, we spend most of the time more than we generate. A country that direct tax, I mean, for the people who pay tax in our country, forms about 6%, about 2 million out of about 34 million. We have a lot of issues with our tax-paying
population.
No, I mean direct tax. Go and check. I said direct tax. Like you pay, I pay, Kofi and something, those who are in the corporate sector. You can go and check. So we have issues with that. And then we came to a point, that this country had to stop working, but people were being paid. This one, nobody wants to listen. Has never occurred in the history of this country that people were asked to stay home, but they were paid for some months. And even when that came to an end, it was extended for about 21 months, where 10 people were working, 5 will come for 2 weeks, other will come for 2 weeks because of these post-COVID issues. And they were being paid. Listen carefully. Private sector sacked over 40,000 people. Payees, corporate taxes. We fall short of our revenue by, I think, somewhere around 12 billion. Check all these things. So we were forced to adopt that financing where we need to use loans to finance some of our statutory obligations and some of the things we needed. And that's why the president made this, in my opinion, divine statement that when it comes to life, we don't have what it takes to bring back life when people were dying. But when it comes to the economy, we can. And now he's proving right. I'm not saying there's no hardship. And even that is why this book, where is it? PFM Act. If you read the section 18 of this 2016 Act 921, it gives some concessions in terms of how we can even suspend our fiscal policies and stuff and rules, because we need to cater for this situation. What we are saying is that our debt has gone up, but debt management is calibrated in nature. It depends on the prevailing situation. When you couldn't have made a lot of revenue generation domestically, you stick to, we had a situation in this country that after Kufuor, the next 8 years of my brothers, our debt was increased from, I think, 9.2 to about 122, which was over 1,000%. We don't want to go back and forth with this sinusoidal performances of some of our indicators. The fact of the matter is that it's not good news. We understand it's not good news. But however, our economic challenges or prevailing in our country is said that we have issues with generating funds ourselves. And that is why...
The Ministry of Finance, where you sit, you have a plan and you know when we can say we have come to recovery, when we can say we are getting to recovery. As far as you are concerned, when are we looking to the recovery?
Recovery of what?
Economic recovery.
Oh, but of course, it's on course. Check.
No, I know that. It's on course. But there is a target. When will we get to economic recovery from this current state in a debt gulf, I said whole, of 742
we have about debt to GDP of about
billion.
55%, I think, by 2028.
In present value
Yes,
terms.
that is what we have. And then something.
By 2028.
Yeah, but let me explain something to you.
So you appreciate the historic nature of where
But I wanted to
the
explain.
government has brought us.
No, I wanted
Except
to-
that you are saying that the debt burden of over 600 billion in your time is justified because of COVID, correct?
Not just COVID. And
Okay.
then it's because of not just COVID largely, yes, but because of, I use a word, negative effective tax rate economy, where the taxes we generate, revenue, they are always woefully inadequate against
But
our
that's a
expenditure
traditional
needs.
problem. That's always
But
been
I wanted
the-
to explain these targets to you.
Okay.
Target settings are kind of something we can change depending on the time. You remember, our GDP growth, the target for 2024 budget was 3.1. As I'm talking to you now, we are growing around 4.7, more than that. In fact, even when it comes to this whole issue about inflation rate and others, we went as far as 54.1. You remember, even exchange rate went to about 54. Now we are doing about 18. So when it comes to target, it depends on the prevailing. So we'll keep on even revising our target. We had about, 1.5, we went to 2.9, they grow 1 to 3.1. So we keep on changing.
Right.
But what I can say is that...
I'm coming to you, Kofi.
What I can say is that even the indicative targets that were set between us and the IMF, most of them, we outperform all of them.
Thank you.
Most of them.
Now, Prof.
It is a fact.
Prof, I'm coming to you.
And
then I'll get to Kofi.
lastly, our debt portfolio, we have included Dachi, you remember, part of the cocoa board debt, and even the ESLA, that initially we did not. And even with that, we've been able to reduce our debt to GDP, not remarkably,
but you would
from
also
about
acknowledge that there are other
7.9
things
to
that there are other things
72.9 to about
there are other things
72.3.
that other experts, including the minority, say should get into the debt burden, and you don't want to add into the debt
Such
burden.
as...
They were treating them as below the
Such
line.
as-
Below
Right.
the line.
Thank you.
So something I think,
So
I think
let
you
me
should
come to
laud
you
the
now.
government
Let me
for
come
what
to
we've
you
been
now.
doing,
Thank
although
you.
there are challenges.
Thank
You
you.
should laud us.
Thank you. So, Prof, the same question. From the explanation you have given about the reduction in the appropriation, it helps my audience. Now, from where I sit, I just look at it. I say, so Jerry Rawlings added only 3 billion, 3.4 or so to our debt burden. I look at Mills, I say he added 6.2 or so to our debt burden. And then, what's his name? Kufuor 6.2, I mean. And then Mills 26. Then Mahama 86. Then Akufo-Addo 600 plus. And then I look at the budget as we have, and I ask myself, how are the things there achievable in the face of this debt burden?
Something. It's huge. I'm sure Ghanaians would have to come to terms that we have a long way.
Exactly why I asked him the question
Yes,
about the
so-
targets.
And that's what I'm saying, a certain level of humility and coming to the realization that it will take us a little longer than probably ordinarily would have expected. If you look at it let me start off this way. 2018, Ghana was among the top 6 fastest growing economies in the world, 2018. In fact, 2019, Ghana's economy was projected as the fastest growing in the whole world. Now, among those countries that Ghana was in the top 6, post-COVID, if you look at the rate of their economic growth, it's far better than Ghana. If you look at it across almost all the indicators, inflation, interest rate, and all of that, it's far better than Ghana. I will tell you why. If you look at what COVID did to Ghana, it's more of what Ghana did as a result of COVID rather than what COVID did. And when I put it that way, it's a clear case of Ghana taking advantage of the virus to mess up. And it's quite characteristic of Ghanaian politicians. In crisis moments, we take advantage. You saw what happened in the financial sector cleanup, the total cost at the end of the day, vis-a-vis what we're trying to achieve. And then something, look at it within the energy sector crisis. and how we took advantage, take or pay, and all that went with it. Today, the biggest threat to our fiscal space is the energy sector. If you look at the energy sector shortfall, from now to 2026, it's projected to reach around approximately 98 billion cedis in energy sector shortfall that the government have to pay in order to keep the lights on. Then you can across. Okay, so this is the real issue. Even though we've created some space, very expensive, through domestic debt restructuring and external debt restructuring, the totality of it is that we have actually pushed the can down the road. And that's why I'm saying that it's a long journey. The headwinds are very real that we need to take into consideration. Look, I mean, if we say no government has borrowed like this government, of course, the size of the economy has not remained the same compared to those other regimes. But if you look at the amount of debt this government has accumulated in the last 7.5 years or so, and you look at the real assets, the underlying assets that we have generated, I don't think we have been prudent. You can't run away from that.
But Prof, we've moved beyond 72 debt to GDP.
Okay.
Let me just
continue. Don't respond to him. Just continue.
That's the most important aspect.
Please make a note.
That's the most important aspect.
So, and then if you look at it over time, and you look at the rate of growth of investment in fixed assets vis-a-vis the rate of borrowing, you see the divergence, which tells you that the bulk of the borrowing actually didn't go to enhancing the cash flow generation capacity of the economy. When you borrow largely for consumption and the rest of them, it makes the debt a bad debt. Borrowing, there's nothing wrong with borrowing. You've not committed a sin by going to borrow. We have good debt and we have bad debt. Okay, so the path of making a debt a bad one is what we chose. It's simply because if you look at how much of the borrowing we have done that went into actually investment in enhancing the cash flow generation capacity of the economy and what went into consumption, the rest of them, you see why we are in this mess. So this is what happens. In good times, borrowing is good. In bad times, it magnifies the negative effect of borrowing. So if it hadn't been COVID and Russia, Ukraine, this government would have gotten away with murder because the crisis wouldn't have crystallized within the time that it happened. It would have probably happened, if you look at our projections, 2025, 2026, you would have seen almost all that we are talking about here. But what COVID did was to fast track it, and it happens right in their face. And probably the reason why we're wondering, hey, what do we do? And the rest of them. Look, if you look at COVID, the fiscal deficit Ghana recorded in COVID year is the highest in Africa. It's the highest. If you see the graph, I can show you here. Ghana is an outlier. So the question is, what was this about this virus that made Ghana's expenditure go that high? And it's simply, it doesn't make sense.
Right.
For management and the rest of them. I think we should just admit. Then this is the reality. So what we have done with this debt restructuring is
especially
to just,
when you take into account what Ghana received because of COVID.
In a certain way, you could even say it was a blessing. We made profits.
Some have said so.
Yeah, I lean towards that. If you look at the numbers, even if you look at the shortfall in revenue and what we receive from the IMF and the World Bank and the rest of them, look, if we were prudent and efficient with our expenditure management, Ghana would have recovered out of this COVID and Russia, Ukraine better off. And of course, you can see it in other countries. Rwanda, Cote d'Ivoire. Look, when COVID came, with all the challenges that came and we lost market access, in the first quarter of this year, 3 countries have gone to the Eurobond market, including a tiny country like Benin. Okay, Benin is putting right leadership on the table. Investors are trooping to Benin. Check their numbers. Look at Cote d'Ivoire. Look, Cote d'Ivoire, the president of Cote d'Ivoire, early part of 2022, said, I don't need to govern in 41 ministers. Can you imagine? At the time, we're looking at something more than 88. He reduced it to 31.
Okay. The president was asked to do so to give a certain signal, but he simply didn't listen to anybody.
This is what we call leadership. Look,
people are resigning, he's replacing them and even adding them.
Look, something, we started talking about this actually in the third quarter of 2021, that leadership needs to respond first because hardship lies ahead of us. But there's a way of courting citizens when you first internalize the austerity and then you can get people to follow you.
Okay.
We failed to do that.
All right. Kofi, So, still on the debt.
So you allow me to
hold on.
something.
Kofi, on the debt.
Yes.
You wanted to even come in before I invited
Sure.
you. What do you see? Do you see beyond 2028? Do you see the midterm or mid-year budget making any impact in the face of the debt burden?
Well, Samson, clearly the mid-year review will not have any impact beyond what the debt exchange program has had, because clearly it won't. But you see, when I listened to Dr. Stephen Amwa, the Deputy Minister for Finance, talked about revenue challenges. And here you have he and his government, in the midst of having revenue challenges, decide a clear line of revenue that every country that we all know rely on, road tolls. You decide to say that you're not taking road tolls. And you hear the argument that it is not bringing so much, it's just bringing 98 million Ghana cedi. And that is, that instead of putting more efficient measures to rake in more revenue from such sources, you rather decide to clear it. And you come and sit here and talk about revenue not being enough when you are throwing away sources of revenue that every country, tell me which country that you have traveled to that don't rely on road tolls. But Samson, like Prof said, the problem we had with COVID was not the virus COVID-19, but it was how we managed the funds that came into the system. And this report of the Auditor General, even as many persons even questioned some of the issues that was raised in the Auditor General's report, still tells you a very, very bad and precarious story of how we manage COVID funds. And the Public Account Committee this week have been looking into this report. And they are unable to provide answers to how they spent our money. And so government continue to quote COVID as the reason for the problem, but it was not the virus that caused us the problem, but how the same government managed the funds that was vested in their hands is what has brought us to this state of affairs. Debt. Samson, you hear him say, oh, we have lowered it. How have you lowered it? You inherit a system where debt to GDP was less than, let me even give, say 60% or even less. You shot it up to over 100% at a certain point. Thank God the debt management or the restructuring has...
Sorry, not to cut you. Do you know the debt to GDP of Kenya, which has led the people onto the streets?
Yeah. And India inflation is less than 8%.
Even less than 8%, yes.
Something. Let me tell you that. What Kenyans are going through is less than 1/4 of what Ghanaians have gone through.
We are all convinced. Allow me to also speak.
Okay.
It's not ambushing.
Say that in a
They
second.
didn't go on demonstration because of debt to GDP.
Okay.
It was, purported introduction of new taxes they didn't want to pay. It's not the debt to GDP. That's
but what is different?
I've had conversations with Kenyans.
But of course, we have various
former
forms.
Chief Justice
But
of
we
Kenya.
limited it to-
Just in the last
Do we
week.
also consider all the pro-poor policies
It's
we
not
are
your
spending
10
a
yet.
lot on
It's not your 10
compared to
yet.
other countries?
It's not your 10
Are we
yet.
doing that?
It's not your 10 yet, yes.
Not
Please,
compared
you
to
don't
Kenya.
have to ambush one person.
Kofi, go on.
That is not correct.
Samson, if you ask them, they will tell you, oh, we have paid so much into LEAP. We have paid so much into school feeding. These are things that existed pre. So they are not new things that you have what? Introduced. Indeed, the coverage has actually even reduced. It is just because the amount has been adjusted slightly, and that is why you see a certain quantum spend in that area. Not because you have even covered more vulnerable persons. So you cannot sit here and be quoting those things. Of course, we also hear recently the Auditor General's findings about the school feeding issues and what is happening in there. So it tells you that even what we are celebrating, again, there's so much rot in that sector. And we need to completely deal with this. Government is refusing to reduce size. There may be a trigger, but there are many underlying issues that could have triggered the people to go on the street. And we are doing the same thing here. Reduce size. Côte d'Ivoire, they have done the same. When they came out of COVID and realized that there's a need to manage their system, what do? They reduce the size of what government. In our case, we are actually even appointing more ministers of states for sectors that already have substantive ministers. You have a minister for local government. You have minister for sanitation. Then you have minister of state at the office of the president for local government. When you are reducing responsibility, that ministry used to be responsible for sanitation, responsible for local governance and all issues. You have broken it down into pieces and have substantive ministers and their deputies, and now have a minister of state responsible for just a small section that used to be run by just one minister and two deputies.
Well, Bamia says you do 50.
But
John
you see,
John Mahama says you do 60.
But you see something, that lies my worry.
Yeah.
You remember, the reframe was that, and the president have told us, he brought Dr. Bawumia to help him deal with the economy. I have not heard Dr. Bawumia himself or any of his spokespersons say the president doesn't listen to him. The argument they were advancing at a certain point is that the Minister of Finance doesn't listen to him.
Okay.
Then now, there was agitation. So the Minister of Finance gets removed and introduce someone we all know will listen to Dr. Bawumia. Dr. Bawumia, before the introduction of this minister, was already preaching some economic policies that he thinks will work, including e-levy that must go, so many things that must go. Now the one who listens to you comes in, and still we have all those things there.
All right.
You think I should believe you?
Okay. Steve.
I think
so
it will be fair you allow me time to respond to you.
I just
Because the two of them are
I
saying
just
almost the
mentioned
same
your
thing.
name. You need to relax.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So, and you are going to have the last bite on this. Then we'll move on to the next topic. If I said all of you are speaking twice, and so you should end, you crucify me. So I'll just give you the opportunity
I'm in the
to
government.
make a little reaction, and then we'll move on to the next.
Yes, sir. Prof is neutral. He is my opponent.
And he's saying things that people like Prof can confirm, the experts can confirm. There are times I like to listen to my good friend Ben Avle break these economic issues down. And the Côte d'Ivoire examples they are giving, I've heard Ben explain them in a way, even in relation to the tax exemption issues, where we are giving away just too much. I have some instructions to do a case in that, so I'm trying to understand it better. And I'm getting an understanding that gets me ask the question, what exactly are you doing? So it is not realistic. In the face of this debt burden, what you have put before us as a mid-year for the next 4 months will not do anything. It's going to be business as usual.
Samson, you've asked a long question. Allow me to answer this clearly.
The question is the last
In the
part.
first place, let's all be understanding the fact that to recover from what the world went through in Ghana, it's a process, it's not an event. And even some of the very indicators, the reason allowing some of the comments and statements are far better than even the year 2000. By June 2016, we are growing 2.7%. This is a fact. 2.7%. I don't want to keep on, because if you do that, then we don't want to be honest with the situation.
If you do that, it will not be sustainable.
You allow them
and
to
you
flow.
will like it.
Can you also allow me
I don't
to
allow them to flow. I interject when I feel it is necessary. When we make a little intervention, you guys simply take an offense.
I'm not
fair.
offended, but you ask a long question. Can you allow me
I didn't ask a long question. It was a very brief question.
Okay.
In the face of this circumstance, what you have projected in this mid-year budget won't make any impact. That's the question.
And what I'm telling you is that it will. In the first place, where we're heading towards, the figures are showing that, yes, now there is hope. It's a process. That is a fact. It is a fact. But they also made certain comments that it would be good on my part, prudent, to also let people know.
You are not restrained from responding.
Exactly. For instance, have we also thought about the mortality rate during the COVID? Have you also considered that? What happened to the Ghanaian, their lives? 2, on your own station, I've been saying this, you remember, we keep on mentioning predominantly the Francophone countries. For Christ's sake,
Kenya is not a Francophone.
Can I finish? But Ghana is doing a lot of things also better than Kenya. Do they also actually give out the same pro-poor policies, the same free SH? We check all those things. So I believe in continental average, global average. Because if you take each country, you have some of the indicators Ghana is doing well. Others too, they are also doing well. And indeed, if you look at today, things like budget deficit, things like GDP, they are all even better than 2016. That is a fact. So I agree that there's hardship, and we need to, in a way, find a way to let Ghanaians understand that there is hope. If you're talking about taxes, something, let's be very honest, debt to GDP, not until we recalibrated our economy. ND system, check 2013 to 2016. I don't have the figures offhand, but they were having debt to GDP, some of them 76, 78. I can send them to you from here. No, we can check. I have them. After this, if I don't send them to you.
Don't have.
No, I said that in Parliament, you couldn't argue. But I didn't know you were raising this.
So
but I'm telling you, between 2013 and 2016, until they did that, this whole economic, time they do rebasing, the debt to GDP was about 76. It was over 70. So that,
rebasing is part of the economic
so the point,
modeling.
No.
You are also using the same rebase to do the calculation today.
When he was interjecting you, I stopped him, so you to allow him.
Today, agri is growing higher than agri sector. Industry is growing higher than we are growing. So I agree there's hardship. But the indicators that were making us get scared, most of them are performing even better than even 2016.
All right.
Not to talk of how we are performing.
Thank you.
This is a fact. This is a fact. He says industry is growing better. Industry is growing at negative 1.2%.
No, that is not.
No, this is your media review
statement.
No, we are
this is your
saying that
media
the
review
4.7.
and it is contributing 31.7% to the structure of the economy.
The 4.7 GDP growth. The greater part. Please.
We'll take a break here. When we return,
negative 1.2.
we have 2 other topics, and you guys are going to be here to help us do that.
So should I do the same thing to him?
Thank you very much. We'll be right back. This is Newsfile.